I bought a condo in secret, then caught my daughter-in-law giving a tour to her family. The master suite is mine. My mom can have the room next door. I waited for them to leave, changed every lock, and installed security cameras. What the cameras captured left me speechless. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. The scent of yeast rolls and honey-glazed ham should have been a comfort. A familiar Sunday anchor in the ever-drifting sea of my retirement. For 40 years, that smell meant family, laughter, and a house brimming with life. But today, sitting at the head of my long, polished dining table, it felt like a trap. The air in my 5-bedroom home in the quiet suburbs of Atlanta was thick with a sweetness that had turned cloying, a pressure that had been building for months. "This ham is just divine, Loretta," my daughter-in-law Jasmine said, her voice as smooth and glossy as her professionally done manicure. She held a wine glass with a practiced elegance that always made me feel a little homespun. "You have a gift. Truly." I offered a tight smile. "It's the same recipe I've used for 20 years, Jasmine. Your husband grew up on it." My son Andre looked up from his plate and grinned. A familiar, easygoing smile that always tugged at my heart. "And I've got the waistline to prove it, Mom." He was a good man, my Andre. Kind, creative, with a heart as big as the Georgia sky. But in the 3 years since he'd married Jasmine, a certain softness had crept into him, a tendency to smooth over conflict rather than face it. He saw his wife's ambition as drive, her materialism as good taste. I saw it as a slow-acting poison. Jasmine reached over and patted his hand, her diamond ring catching the light from the chandelier overhead. "Don't be silly, baby. You're perfect. We just need to make sure your mom is taken care of. That's all. This big old house, it's a lot for one person." There it was, the opening salvo in a battle I was tired of fighting. Ever since my husband Robert had passed away 2 years ago, this had become Jasmine's favorite topic. It started with subtle hints, little comments about the yard work, the empty rooms, the property taxes. Now it was a full frontal assault, conducted with the syrupy concern of a daytime television commercial. "I'm managing just fine," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. "I've been managing this house since before you were born, dear." "Oh, I know, she said, her tone a masterclass in condescension. "You're a superhero, Loretta. We all know that, but it's about quality of life now. Don't you want to relax? Travel a little? You've worked so hard your whole life. You deserve to be pampered, not worried about a leaky roof or a broken furnace." I had been a high school principal for 30 years. I'd handled budget crises, gang tensions, and parent-teacher conferences that could curdle milk. The idea that a leaky roof would send me into a tailspin was insulting. Andre shifted in his seat, sensing the tension. "What Jasmine means, Mom, is that we worry about you here all alone. It's a big space. Maybe something a little more manageable. We could find you a beautiful little apartment, closer to us. We could help you manage everything, the bills, the upkeep. Take all that stress off your plate. Manage me." That was the phrase that made the hair on my arms stand up. I was 62, not 92. My mind was as sharp as it had ever been. And my finances, thanks to Robert's meticulous planning and my own frugality, were in perfect order. I didn't need to be managed, I needed to be respected. They saw me as a doddering old woman, sitting on a valuable asset they couldn't wait to get their hands on. They imagined my nest egg was their future security deposit. They pictured my home, the one Robert and I had filled with memories, as a line item on their financial plan. Every corner of this house held a piece of my life. Andre's first steps were taken in the living room. The big oak in the backyard held the remnants of a tire swing Robert had hung for him. The scuff marks on the doorframe in the kitchen charted his growth from a toddler to a young man who towered over me. To them it was just square footage. Equity, a burden I needed to be relieved of. "I appreciate your concern," I said, choosing my words with the care of a diplomat. "But I'm happy here. This is my home." Jasmine sighed, a delicate, put-upon sound. She set down her fork and gave Andre a look that was meant to convey loving frustration. "See, baby, she's just so attached. It's understandable, but is it practical, Loretta? Think of the money you'd have if you sold. You could put it in a nice safe account, and we could help you make sure it lasts. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." Her words painted a picture of me as a feeble-minded widow, incapable of handling her own affairs, needing her brilliant, worldly daughter-in-law to protect her from the complexities of modern life. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, wrapped in the language of love. Andre, my sweet conflict-averse Andre, just nodded along, believing he was being a good son. He didn't see the calculation in his wife's eyes. He didn't see that this wasn't about my well-being. It was about their enrichment. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze of strained pleasantries. I nodded and smiled, the perfect matriarch, while a cold hard resolve began to form in my chest. They thought I was old. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a problem to be managed. It was time to remind them what a principal does when her authority is challenged. She doesn't argue, she takes control. As I washed the dishes that night, the house felt cavernous around me. For the first time, Jasmine's words echoed with a sliver of truth, but not in the way she intended. The house was a lot. It was a lot of memory, a lot of space, and a lot of connection to a life that was now in the past. Perhaps a change wasn't a surrender. Perhaps it was a liberation, but it would be on my terms, not theirs. The next morning, instead of calling my gardener, I called the top real estate agent in the county. I didn't just want to sell my house, I wanted it to vanish from their plans, silently and completely. The decision once made felt like a jolt of electricity. For 2 years I had been drifting, defined by my widowhood, by the house, by the role of mom. Jasmine's relentless pressure, meant to corner me, had instead propelled me forward. She thought she was writing my final chapter. She had no idea I was starting a whole new book. I met the realtor, a sharp woman named Denise. That afternoon, she walked through the house, her eyes wide with appreciation. "This is a gem, Loretta. The market is hot. We can have this sold in a month. Maybe less. There's one condition," I said, my voice steady. "This has to be a private sale. No sign in the yard, no public open houses. I don't want my family to know until the ink is dry." Denise raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Discretion is my middle name. We'll market it to our exclusive list of buyers. Consider it done." While Denise handled the sale of my past, I began to build my future. I spent hours online, not looking at the depressing senior living communities Jasmine kept sending me links to, but at the gleaming new high-rises in Buckhead. I wasn't looking for a place to quietly fade away. I was looking for a fortress, a command center, a place with a view. I found it on the 25th floor of a sleek glass tower. A 2-bedroom corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire Atlanta skyline. It was modern, bright, and utterly mine. It was a place where no one could tell me I was taking up too much space. The sale of the house went through faster than I could have imagined. A young family, eager for good schools and a big yard, paid my asking price without a single quibble. The closing was a quiet, surreal affair. I signed the papers, handed over the keys to a life I had treasured, and felt not a pang of sadness, only a thrilling, terrifying sense of freedom. The money, a sum that would have made Jasmine's eyes pop, was wired directly into a new bank account at a new bank, an account my son knew nothing about. I paid for the condo in cash, a clean transaction that left no paper trail for prying eyes. I arranged for my most precious belongings, Robert's desk, my mother's china, a lifetime of photo albums to be moved into a secure climate-controlled storage unit. My plan was simple. I would spend a week or 2 getting the condo set up, a quiet period of transition. I would buy new furniture, hang new curtains, and breathe the filtered air of my new life. Then, and only then, would I invite Andre and Jasmine over. I would serve them tea in my sun-drenched living room, and calmly inform them that their services in managing me would no longer be required. I imagined the look on Jasmine's face, a delicious mix of shock and fury. That fantasy was my fuel. The condo was a blank canvas. The walls were a crisp, clean white. The floors were a pale oak. The only sound was the gentle hum of the central air. It was perfect. I had a few days before the movers were scheduled to bring the essentials I'd kept out of storage, and a week before my new furniture was set to arrive. I decided to spend the afternoon at the condo with a tape measure and a notepad, planning the layout, dreaming of where my new life would fit. I took the sleek, silent elevator up to the 25th floor, my heart humming with a quiet joy I hadn't felt in years. This was real. This was mine. I walked down the plushly carpeted hallway, the air smelling of new paint and possibility. As I neared my unit, 25B, I heard something that made me freeze. Laughter. Not just any laughter, a familiar high-pitched laugh that belonged to my daughter-in-law. My blood ran cold. It wasn't possible. No one knew about this place. I must have been mistaken. It was probably a neighbor. But then I heard another voice, older, coarser, Girl, you really did it this time. This is fabulous. Pamela, Jasmine's mother. I crept closer, my sensible shoes making no sound on the thick carpet. The door to my condo was slightly ajar. My heart hammered against my ribs. Through the narrow opening, I could see them, Jasmine, standing in the middle of my empty living room, her arms spread wide as if she were embracing a kingdom. Next to her was her mother, Pamela, a woman who always looked at me with a mixture of envy and pity. And behind them, her younger sister Keisha, filming everything on her phone. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the impossible. How did they get in? How did they even know this place existed? I pressed my ear closer to the door, my breath held tight in my chest. Jasmine's voice floated out into the hallway, dripping with a triumphant, proprietary tone. I told you, Mama. It's perfect. The view is to die for. So this is it. She really just gave it to you, Keisha asked, her voice full of awe. I leaned in, desperate to hear the answer, to understand the lie she was spinning. Jasmine let out a theatrical sigh. Well, not gave, Keisha. Don't be crude. I had to be very persuasive. Loretta is just so fragile right now, and she was overwhelmed by the big house. I convinced her that the best thing for her financial security was to invest in this property under our name. We'll manage it for her, of course. It's a win-win. She gets the peace of mind and we get a little slice of the good life. My fists clenched at my sides. The sheer audacity of the lie was breathtaking. She had painted me as a dotty old woman she had cleverly maneuvered into buying them a luxury condo. Pamela walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, her hands on her hips. Well, you played this smart, baby girl. Real smart. So which room is mine when I come to visit? The question hung in the air, and Jasmine's answer was the blow that shattered my disbelief and replaced it with a diamond-hard rage. She turned, a queen surveying her domain, and pointed towards the 2 bedrooms. So, this will be our living room, obviously. I'm thinking a big white sectional right here. And the master suite is mine, of course. It has the walk-in closet. My mom can have the room next door when she stays with us. Loretta was so sweet to give us this place. We're moving her into a lovely senior community just outside the city next month. I recoiled from the door as if I had been physically struck. The words echoed in my head. The master suite is mine. My mom can have the room next door. Moving her into a lovely senior community. They weren't just planning to take my condo. They were planning to dispose of me, to shuttle me off to some depressing beige facility while they lived out their champagne fantasies on my life savings. Keisha squealed with delight. Oh my God, Jess. You're gonna be living in Buckhead. We have to throw a housewarming party. Of course we will, Jasmine said, preening for her sister's phone. But we have to handle the Loretta situation delicately. Andre is still a little sensitive about it. He thinks we should let her stay here for a while. Can you believe it? So sentimental. I told him it's for her own good. She needs to be around people her own age with supervised activities. Supervised activities. The phrase dripped with such condescension it made me want to scream. I had supervised an entire high school. I had balanced multi-million-dollar budgets. And this vapid, greedy child was talking about putting me in a place with scheduled bingo and chair yoga. My first instinct was to burst through the door, to unleash a torrent of fury that would peel the paint from the walls. I wanted to see the shock on their faces, to watch their smug satisfaction curdle into fear. But as the rage washed over me, a lifetime of strategic thinking took its place. I wasn't a screaming teenager. I was Loretta Jackson, a principal, and a principal knows that a public outburst is a loss of control. True power lies in strategy, in patience, in letting your opponent walk right into the trap you've meticulously set. So I waited. I stood there in the hallway, my back pressed against the cool wall, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I listened as they chattered on about renovation plans, about new furniture, about the parties they would throw. They were picking out paint swatches for walls they would never own, planning a life they had stolen in their minds. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard them gathering their things. All right, let's go get some celebratory brunch, Jasmine announced. I know the perfect spot. I held my breath as the door swung open. I flattened myself against the wall in the alcove opposite my condo, praying the shadows would hide me. They spilled out into the hallway, laughing and giddy, their minds already filled with visions of their stolen future. They didn't even glance in my direction. They were too absorbed in their victory to notice the vanquished queen standing just a few feet away. I watched them walk to the elevator, their triumphant laughter echoing down the hall. The moment the elevator doors whispered shut, I moved. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. The shock had been cauterized by a pure, cold fury. My mind was crystal clear. A battlefield where a plan of action was already snapping into place. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving with a speed and precision that surprised me. I didn't call Andre. I didn't call a lawyer. I called a 24-hour locksmith. Yes, I said, my voice low and steady. I need an emergency lock change for a new property, and I want your best, most high-security deadbolts. The kind that can't be picked, can't be bumped, can't be bypassed. As I stood in my empty, violated condo waiting for the locksmith, I felt a profound shift within me. The grief for my husband, the loneliness of my big house, the frustration with my son, it all burned away, leaving behind something new, something hard and unyielding. Jasmine and her family thought they were dealing with a weak, sentimental old woman. They had no idea they had just awakened a sleeping giant. This wasn't just my condo anymore. It was my fortress, and the siege was about to begin. The next morning, I wasn't just a homeowner, I was a general fortifying her position. The locksmith had worked late into the night, installing heavy-duty deadbolts and a state-of-the-art keyless entry pad on my front door. The new keys felt heavy and significant in my hand. They weren't just metal, they were a declaration of sovereignty. But locks were only a passive defense. I needed intelligence. I needed to see my enemy's next move before they made it. My next call was to a top-rated home security company. I didn't want the basic package with a few window sensors. I wanted the works. I need high-definition cameras. I told the sales representative, a young man named David, I want one in the hallway with a clear view of my front door, another inside, covering the entryway and the living room. I want motion detection, night vision, and the ability to access a live feed and recordings from my phone, anytime, anywhere. David, ever the professional, didn't ask why a woman in a luxury condo needed a surveillance system worthy of a bank vault. He simply said, absolutely, Mrs. Jackson, we can have a technician there by 10 a.m. The technician, a quiet, efficient man named Carlos, spent 3 hours wiring my fortress. He placed a tiny, almost invisible camera in the ceiling of the public hallway, nestled in a corner where no one would ever think to look. Inside, he installed a discrete dome camera that gave me a panoramic view of the main living area. He walked me through the app on my phone, showing me how to set up motion alerts, how to review footage, how to listen to the audio the cameras picked up. As Carlos packed up his tools, he paused at the door. You're all set, ma'am. Nobody's getting in here without you knowing about it. Thank you, Carlos, I said, a grim satisfaction settling over me. That's exactly the point. With my defenses in place, I could finally begin the work of making the condo my own. The movers brought my essential boxes, and I spent the next few days unpacking. Each item I placed felt like an act of defiance. My mother's china, arranged carefully in the new kitchen cabinets. Robert's favorite armchair, positioned by the window with the best view of the city. My books lining the shelves of the second bedroom, which was to be my office and library. Not a guest room for Pamela Booker. I was reclaiming my space, exorcising the ghosts of their greedy whispers. With every picture I hung, I felt stronger. The woman who had stood frozen in the hallway was gone. In her place was a strategist, a woman in complete control of her environment. The inevitable phone call came 3 days later. I was sitting in Robert's armchair, sipping a cup of tea and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read Jasmine. I let it ring 3 times before answering, taking a slow, calming breath. I had to play my part perfectly. I was no longer the assertive principal. I was the frail, confused widow they believed me to be. Hello? I answered, pitching my voice to sound a little tired, a little lost. Loretta, honey, how are you doing? Jasmine's voice was a tidal wave of synthetic sweetness. I was just thinking about you all alone in that big house. I looked out my floor-to-ceiling windows at the glittering expanse of the city. Oh, you know, dear. Just rattling around in this old place. Same as always. Well, that's actually why I'm calling, she chirped, getting straight to the point. Andre and I were doing some research, and Loretta, we found the most perfect retirement village for you. It's called Willow Creek Gardens. It has a community garden and a book club and everything. It's safe, secure, and all your meals are taken care of. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Willow Creek Gardens. It sounded like a place where you went to quietly wait for the end. I felt a flash of hot anger, but I pushed it down, replacing it with the quavering voice of a woman who was losing her grip. Oh, Jasmine, that's, that's so thoughtful of you to look into that for me, I said, letting a little tremble enter my voice. It sounds nice, but, oh, I don't know. Leaving my home, it's such a big decision. I could almost hear the triumphant smile in her voice. I was playing my part perfectly. I was the hesitant, sentimental old fool, easily manipulated with a few sweet words and the promise of a garden. Of course it's a big decision, sweetie, she cooed. That's why Andre and I are going to handle everything for you. We'll take care of all the paperwork, all the arrangements. You just have to say yes. We want to see you happy and carefree. We want your house and your money. I thought. We want you out of the way. Let me think about it, dear, I whispered. My mind is just so muddled these days. It's a lot to process. You do that, Loretta, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. We'll talk again soon. Just know that we are taking care of you. I hung up the phone, my hand steady. I looked at the security app at the clear, crisp image of my empty, silent hallway. She thought she was taking care of me. She thought she was in control, but I was the one watching. I was the one waiting, and I knew with every fiber of my being that they would not wait for my permission. They would make their move soon, and my cameras would be waiting. A week passed. It was a strange, tense period of calm before the storm. I continued to settle into my new life, a ghost in my own home, a secret resident of the life they thought they had stolen. I ordered furniture online, arranged for utilities to be put in my name, and systematically untangled every financial thread that connected me to my son. Each action was a quiet snip of the scissors, cutting myself free. The motion alert came on a Tuesday morning. It was a cheerful little ping from my phone, a sound that made my heart leap into my throat. I was at a cafe a few blocks away, enjoying a latte and a croissant, a small luxury of my new life. I quickly opened the security app. My screen filled with the live feed from the camera in the hallway. The image was perfectly clear. There they were, Andre and Jasmine, standing in front of my door, and behind them Pamela and Keisha. They weren't empty-handed. They were carrying cardboard boxes, filled to the brim. Andre had a strained look on his face, a deep unease in his eyes. But Jasmine was beaming. She looked like a conqueror arriving to claim her spoils. They were attempting a hostile move-in. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it left me breathless. They weren't just planning to take my home. They were physically trying to occupy it, to plant their flag in my territory, assuming I was too weak or too stupid to stop them. I watched, my latte forgotten, as Jasmine fished a key from her purse. It glinted under the hallway lights. A key. How in God's name did she get a key? The question burned in my mind. A fresh wave of betrayal washing over me. But there was no time to dwell on it. The show was starting. Jasmine inserted the key into the brand new high-security lock. She turned it with a confident flick of the wrist. Nothing happened. The deadbolt, my beautiful unmovable deadbolt, held firm. Her smile faltered. She jiggled the key, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. She pulled it out, examined it as if it had personally offended her, and tried again. Still nothing. What's wrong? Pamela asked, her voice a reedy whine. I don't know, Jasmine snapped, her frustration growing. It was working last week. Last week, the words hit me like a ton of bricks. She'd had a key made from a spare she must have gotten from the leasing agent, or a contractor. She had been in my home, my sanctuary, even before the tour. Jasmine then turned her attention to the keypad. It's fine. The agent gave me the master code just in case. She confidently tapped a sequence of numbers onto the sleek black surface. The keypad beeped once, then flashed a single defiant word in glowing red letters: access denied. The color drained from Jasmine's face. Her triumphant smile had completely vanished, replaced by a mask of pure ugly rage. This was not part of her plan. The world was not bending to her will, and she couldn't stand it. What is going on? She seethed, turning to Andre. Did you talk to her? Did she do something? Andre, who had been standing back looking deeply uncomfortable, just shook his head. I haven't spoken to her since Sunday, Jas. You know that. Jasmine let out a furious growl and did something that shocked even me. She started banging on the door with her fist, like a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. Loretta, are you in there? Open this door. Of course, I wasn't in there. I was miles away, watching her unravel on a 4-inch screen, a grim smile touching my lips for the first time that morning. The fortress was holding, the walls were secure, and now it was time for the master of the castle to listen in. I tapped the audio icon on the app, and their frantic, angry voices filled my ears. Andre pulled out his phone, his face etched with worry. I'm calling her. Something's not right. She wouldn't just change the locks. Oh, my sweet naive boy. You have no idea what your mother is capable of. As Andre moved a few feet down the hall to make his call, trying to get a better signal, Jasmine turned to her mother. She clearly thought she was out of earshot, but this was a private family conference. She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, a venomous, ugly sound, and the high-definition microphone on my hidden camera, my silent little sentinel, captured every single word. Don't worry, Mama. Jasmine hissed, her perfectly applied lipstick twisted into a sneer. This is just a hiccup. She's probably having one of her senior moments. As soon as we get her moved out and settled at Willow Creek, we'll have full control. Pamela looked worried, clutching a box labeled Jizz shoes to her chest. But what if Andre backs out? He looks nervous. Jasmine waved a dismissive hand, her bracelets jangling. Andre is a co-signer on her main bank account. I made sure of that last year, for emergencies. He's too soft to stop me from using her money to manage her expenses. He'll do what I tell him to do. Once we have access to that money, this place is just the beginning. The real money is in her investment portfolio. Robert left her a fortune. I felt the air leave my lungs. I sat bolt upright in the cafe, the world around me fading into a dull roar. A co-signer, my son, on my main account. I remembered the meeting at the bank last year. Jasmine had insisted on it. She said it was for my protection, in case I had a medical emergency and couldn't access my own funds. She had called it responsible planning, and I, wanting to keep the peace, wanting to believe in the goodness of my son's wife, had agreed. Andre had sat there, nodding along, believing he was helping his mother, but he wasn't helping me. He was handing his wife the keys to my kingdom. The camera captured the greedy light in Pamela's eyes. It captured Keisha nodding eagerly, a willing accomplice to the theft of my life. And it captured the cold, hard certainty on Jasmine's face, as she laid out her plan to strip me of everything I owned. My hands were trembling, but not with fear. It was rage. A pure, clarifying rage that burned away any last shred of doubt, any lingering affection I might have had for the woman my son had married. She hadn't just disrespected me. She hadn't just tried to steal from me. She had methodically and patiently laid a trap for me, using my own son as the bait. My phone started ringing. It was Andre. I saved the video clip from the security feed, a tidy little file of evidence that sealed their fate. Then, I took a deep, steadying breath and answered the call. Mom, thank God. Are you okay? We're here at the new place. The door isn't opening. Did you change the locks? His voice was a jumble of confusion and concern. My voice when I spoke was as calm and cold as a winter morning. Andre, I said, cutting through his panicked chatter, put your phone on speaker. There's something your wife and her mother need to hear. There was a moment of hesitation. I could hear Jasmine whispering furiously in the background. Don't do it. Put it on speaker, Andre. Now. My tone was not a request. It was the command of a principal who was done with games. I heard a click. You're on speaker, Mom. What's going on? I didn't answer him. Instead, I opened the video file I had just saved. I turned up the volume on my phone and played the audio. Jasmine's venomous whisper filled the silence, echoing from my phone into theirs. Don't worry, Mama. As soon as we get her moved out, we'll have full control. Andre is a co-signer on her main bank account. He's too soft to stop me, using her money to manage her expenses. This place is just the beginning. A dead, profound silence came from the other end of the line. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of discovery, of a conspiracy laid bare. I could picture their faces, the blood draining from Jasmine's, the panic in Pamela's, the utter soul-crushing devastation on my son's. Jasmine was the first to break, her voice a frantic, stammering mess. Loretta, that's not what it sounds like. I was just worried. I cut her off. Save it, Jasmine. My voice was devoid of all emotion. It was the voice of judgment. The condo is mine. The house is sold. And Andre, I said, my words like chips of ice. You and I will be visiting the bank first thing tomorrow morning, at 9 a.m. sharp, alone. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the lies, the pathetic attempts to wriggle free. I simply ended the call. Then I turned my attention back to the security feed on my phone. The scene in the hallway was pure chaos. Jasmine was screaming at Andre, her mask of sophistication completely gone, revealing the grasping, ugly creature beneath. Pamela was wringing her hands, her face a mess of terror, and Andre, my son, was just standing there, his shoulders slumped, the moving box dropped at his feet, looking at his wife as if for the very first time. He looked utterly broken. A part of me ached for him, for the pain he was feeling, but a larger part of me, the part that had been awakened and sharpened by their betrayal, knew this was necessary. Sometimes the only way to heal is to first cauterize the wound, and their world, their carefully constructed world of lies and entitlement, was burning to the ground. I took a slow sip of my now cold latte. The show, I thought, was finally over, and I had won. The next morning, Andre was waiting for me outside the bank at 10 till 9. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, and the designer clothes Jasmine usually picked out for him were rumpled and stained. He looked like a man who had seen his own life for the fraud it was. He flinched when he saw me, as if expecting a tirade. But I was done with anger. All that was left was a deep, sorrowful resolve. "Mom," he began, his voice cracking, "I am so sorry. I had no idea, I swear to you." I looked at my son, the boy I had raised to be kind and trusting, and I saw how those very qualities had been twisted and used against us both. "You didn't want to have an idea, Andre," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "You saw the little things, the disrespect, the condescension, and you chose to look away because it was easier. You wanted peace in your home and you were willing to sacrifice my dignity to get it." The truth of it hit him like a physical blow. Tears welled in his eyes, and he didn't try to stop them. "You're right," he whispered, his shoulders slumping in defeat. How did she get a key?" "She told me you went to the leasing office with her," he said, his voice thick with shame. "She said you wanted a spare key kept there for emergencies in case I couldn't reach you. She said you signed a form authorizing it. She made it sound so responsible, so caring. I went along with it. I thought I was helping." Of course she did. Every lie was wrapped in the language of concern. Every act of theft was framed as an act of love. "Let's go inside, son," I said. "We have business to attend to." Inside the bank, the process was clinical and swift. I sat with the bank manager, a woman I had known for years, and explained that I wanted to close my current checking account and open a new one, under my name alone. I wanted to move all my investment portfolios into new accounts with new passwords. I was building a financial fortress, brick by digital brick. Andre sat beside me, silent and ashamed. When the manager asked him to sign the form relinquishing his co-signer status, he did so without a moment's hesitation, his hand trembling slightly. It was the signature of a man finally taking responsibility for his own blindness. As we walked out of the bank into the bright morning sun, it felt like a weight had been lifted. The invisible threads Jasmine had woven around my life, around my finances, had all been cut. Andre stopped on the sidewalk. "What happens now, Mom?" "Now," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "you go home and you decide what kind of man you want to be. The man who enables a thief because he's afraid of confrontation, or the man who stands up for what is right, no matter how hard it is." He nodded, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. He knew his marriage was over. More than that, he knew it had never been real. It was a transaction he had been too infatuated to recognize. The 6 months that followed were a period of quiet, deliberate reconstruction. My life, my home, my relationships, I was rebuilding them all from the ground up on a new, unshakable foundation. The condo, once a secret refuge, became my vibrant, joyful home. The new furniture arrived, a collection of pieces I had chosen myself for myself. The colors were bolder, the lines cleaner. It was the home of a woman who knew her own mind. Robert's armchair still sat by the window, a comforting link to my past, but it was surrounded by the evidence of my future. I threw myself into a new venture. Using my decades of experience, I started a small consulting business for newly appointed school principals. I helped them navigate the treacherous waters of school board politics, budget negotiations, and staff management. I found a deep, profound satisfaction in it. My wisdom, the very thing my daughter-in-law had dismissed as irrelevant, was now my greatest asset. I wasn't a retiree to be managed. I was a mentor to be respected. Andre and I began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our relationship. He did separate from Jasmine. The divorce was messy and bitter, with Jasmine trying to claim that she was entitled to a share of his future inheritance. A claim that was swiftly laughed out of court. He started therapy. He began to unpack the years of his own passivity, to understand how his desire for an easy life had made him complicit in his wife's schemes. Our Sunday dinners started again, but they were different now. The conversations were honest, sometimes painfully so. There were no more secrets, no more unspoken tensions. He was learning to be the man I always knew he could be, and I was learning to see him not just as my son, but as a man finding his own strength. He never asked me for a penny. He moved into a small apartment, sold the expensive car Jasmine had insisted on, and began to live within his own means. He was finding his own worth separate from his wife's ambitions and his mother's wealth. One sunny afternoon, as I was preparing for a client meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from him. It was a link to an article. Local influencers' lavish lifestyle revealed to be funded by fraud. Jasmine's carefully curated online world had come crashing down. An anonymous source. I had my suspicions it was a disgruntled Keisha, had leaked the story of her deception to a local blogger. Her sponsorships were dropped. Her followers turned on her. The perfect life she had projected was revealed to be a hollow sham. I felt a small grim flicker of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. Her fate was no longer my concern. I was too busy building my own. My life was full. I had my work, new friends from the consulting world, and a son who was finally becoming a true partner in our relationship. The fortress I had built to protect myself had become a vibrant open home. I was on my balcony one evening, a glass of iced tea in my hand, watching the lights of the Atlanta skyline begin to twinkle on one by one. The view from the 25th floor was magnificent. It was a view of a world of possibilities. I thought about Jasmine and her family. They had looked at me and seen an ending. They saw a woman whose best years were behind her, a resource to be drained, an obstacle to be moved. They had tried to put me in a box, a small manageable container labeled, old, frail and irrelevant. Their mistake was thinking I would quietly climb inside. Their pressure hadn't crushed me. It had compressed me. It had turned all my years of experience, all my quiet strength, all my love for my family into something dense and unbreakable. A diamond. By trying to write my final chapter, they had forced me to start a new volume. They had wanted to take my legacy, but they had ended up cementing it. I was not just Robert's widow or Andre's mother. I was Loretta Jackson, the woman who had built her own fortress and now ruled her own kingdom. The city spread out before me, a glittering tapestry of a million lives, a million stories, and mine, I thought with a deep, peaceful certainty, was far from over. I raised my glass to the skyline, to the future, to the unshakable knowledge that I was finally completely and unapologetically the master of my own magnificent view.